late. We're almost at midnight and Thanksgiving Day, Turkey Day. We're definitely going to be crossing that border here in Arkansas. And look, Hogvillenet YouTube Live. We're going to carry the coverage whatever time we need to do it. I know right now Arkansas fans that stayed up to watch this game probably went from disappointed in the team's performance and effort early. In fact, most of the game, I would say, into parts of the second half, this was a Razorback team to me that looked not tired, but kind of checked out at times. I thought the ball handling and decision making of guys like Devo Davis, Ricky Council, Brazil kind of not really locked in. And I thought San Diego State took the fight to Arkansas early. This wasn't a team that was as big as Arkansas in terms of height or length, not as athletic, not end-to-end quickness or speed necessarily. At some positions, they had that advantage. But these guys were strong, veteran team, seniors, 7 seniors in their rotation, 2 juniors. And I just thought they outsmarted Arkansas. If you looked early in this game, neither team had a three-pointer at halftime. In fact, both teams struggled to, Arkansas was the first one to get on the board with a 3 with Brazil starting the second half. But San Diego State didn't have a lot of assists either. And if someone had told me that going into halftime, they'd have just a handful of assists and no made threes, I'd figure Arkansas was either in the lead or it was a close game. And it was fairly close. I mean, that's relative, right? Arkansas's down 9. Devo hits a runner. They were down 11, as much as 13 in that first half. But I thought Arkansas just didn't play with the same intensity, the same attention to detail. You saw guys like Ricky Council and Devo just wild with the ball, kicking around, doing all kinds of crazy stuff that's kind of out of their character collectively. We've seen individually guys have some problems with turnovers. Some of it looked like what I saw in Texas, where the Razorbacks really struggled. And a lot of it is self-inflicted. Eric Musselman keeps talking about self-inflicted. San Diego State did a good job. You've got to give them some credit. But they were the more physical team. They were plus 16 at one point in points in the paint in the second half, 28-12. Arkansas didn't do a whole lot very well, and they didn't do a whole lot right. And it wasn't like they were just being overwhelmed by guys that had more skill. This is just an older, savvy team. Creighton had a lot of true basketball skill that Arkansas had to deal with. This team had more just guys that knew what their strengths and weaknesses were. You saw old man playground moves, up and unders, and using the pivot foot and using some of their guys were stocky, and they'd use that frame to lean into a bigger hog, create enough space to get a shot off, and they were proficient. The Bradley dude, lit Arkansas up. He reminded me of Adrian Dantley back from the 80s, a 6'4" guard that kind of played like a forward sometimes and torched bigger players around the basket because he knew how to play. And that's what I saw in the Bradley kid. But everybody for San Diego State was locked in this game. I thought going into it, I said it in the pregame, the Arkansas Razorbacks were the more talented team. If Arkansas didn't have a hangover and showed up tonight, it should win the game. So I think we saw 2 different games. And I think Eric Musselman, we've seen him in previous years tweak his rotation mid-season. We saw him tweak his rotation mid-game. In the pregame, we talked about Kamani Johnson. His name came up. He's been a non-factor really since Europe, let's be honest. And I said, who knows how this is going to play out? Maybe we see him tonight. Well, we saw Kamani Johnson. We see what he brings to the table. You're going to be in a rock fight with a team that you have more talent than, more size, more athleticism, and you're going to sleepwalk for the first 30 minutes? Give me Kamani Johnson. Let's turn this around. I like Barry Dunning's minutes. I like what he did when he came in. He was diving on the floor. He got a steal. They had him with 2 steals. They took one away, but he was a difference maker. Arkansas, when you're against a team that has that much veteran know-how and you're still young and have some growing pains, you got to have warriors. And this was a different game, a different matchup. I also said that in pregame. Let's determine what mattered in this game after the fact. We can have talking points before. We can look at stats. But what did we see? Throw the stats out the window. At some point, Arkansas got mad and said, no, we're going to be the nasty team in Maui tonight. You guys were nasty for 25, 30 minutes, nastier than we were. We backed down a little bit, or we didn't come fully focused. And, Anthony Black carried the water again early. He carried the water for the Razorbacks. And I thought while Council was struggling, Brazil now, I guess he's a second half player. He has been in these last 2 games. And then Council did that. You saw Musselman, Devo did not have a good night. He hit that runner to get Arkansas back in at halftime. I thought he made some poor decisions in the first half. You saw in the second half, Musselman decides to use a guy like Barry Dunning, get him in there. Kamani Johnson late. He kind of veered away from the Mitchell twins, who did a couple of good things, but to me, this just wasn't their night. But what about Kamani Johnson? 7 points, 7 rebounds, a couple of steals in this game. He hits before he hits the buzzer beater on a putback, we know that's his game. He'd done a good job of battling on the glass, being physical, and sending a message. And to that point, Arkansas really hadn't done that. Not enough of it. And he basically put his stamp on the game at that point. And I thought that's exactly what Arkansas needed. Eric Musselman, this is the beauty of this guy. Top 6, 7, 8 rotation. Well, there's enough talent and weapons on that bench that if he needs to push buttons, he seems to know when to do it. He dialed it up at the right time, just in time, the nick of time. Arkansas, I've mentioned it, minus 16 in points to paint. They finished the game minus 2. That's how much they turned the tide. Ricky Council finally started to kind of lock in with his ball handling. He was spraying the ball all over the place. He had a missed point-blank layup where he should have had an easy, maybe a dunk in transition. He just didn't look like himself. He looked like he did to me at Texas when he struggled with the ball, but he figured that out in game. Trevon Brazile flirts with another 2010 double-double that he started the season out with. Ends up with 29. I need to go back and look at the stats. I thought he had 10 or 11 rebounds. I had him with 9 the last I looked. I may be behind a little bit on the stats, but Arkansas was minus in the turnover department most of the night, just careless. They ended up pulling up even in that. They shrunk that difference in points off turnovers. Points in the paint, again, that's where Arkansas has been so good. They were so far behind. They made all that up. Fast break was about even. But I thought Arkansas really getting to the free throw line. There were times where I thought, man, this team's missing opportunities. But they were just, I haven't mentioned Jordan Walsh's name. He was battling, saving balls inbounds, battling on the glass. He made some big plays in this game. Anthony Black, who went cold for a while after a good first half, gave Arkansas some lift in that down the stretch, made some free throws himself. I thought it was insane when San Diego State went up by 4 after making 2 free throws with 17 seconds left, that at the other end they fouled Anthony Black 26 feet from the basket with his back turned. Just 4 seconds later, 13 seconds left. In that sense, I don't think you foul to prevent a 3. You're up 4 and the clock is so shrunk down and you're making free throws. I think you play that out and take your chances. Arkansas is not a good three-point shooting team. I thought that was a poor decision. I don't know if that came from the bench or the player made an error, but Black steps up, makes his free throws. Arkansas presses and traps, uses that length and size and athleticism, traps a player in the backcourt near the corner. He loses the ball. Trevon Brazile, beautiful presence of mind, falls on it, timeout. That length and athleticism didn't penalize Arkansas because I thought he was so close to the sideline he might roll out of bounds, but he didn't. And then Arkansas goes to work. You put it in Anthony Black's hands. He drives to the basket, gets it up on the glass. Kamani Johnson. I mean, this guy is not a guy that you really see. We know he's going to get on the glass, and we know that he can draw fouls. He's sort of hit and miss at the free throw line. He's not necessarily a guy that has a lot of touch when he has the ball in possession around the basket, because there's always other big bodies. He doesn't get above the rim, and sometimes he's not a guy that necessarily finishes with a touch. But man, he had touch when Arkansas had to have it. I mean, he flipped that ball right in there, beats the buzzer. Arkansas gets it to overtime. You saw Ricky Council, start things off by getting Arkansas their first lead in overtime. And it was kind of back and forth. Council scores again. We saw Arkansas, Kamani get another putback on a just a wild possession where several Razorbacks were just out fighting. If it was a knife fight in an alley, Arkansas won it. And it just didn't look like it was ever going to be that way. It looked like the other team was going to figure out a way all night long to just win those battles and maybe win by 8 to 10 points. And Arkansas just refused to let that happen. Were they sleepwalking? Were they hungover from the way the game ended yesterday? There was something that wasn't right. I'm going to give San Diego State some credit. We're not going to completely discount that team because it's a good team. That's a good team. That's an NCAA tournament team. That's a quad 1 win, by the way, for Arkansas. When net rankings come out, unless this team falls apart, that's going to be a quad 1 win. Now you've got 1-1, and you got that done in November. I think that's great. But I do think that Arkansas, while I'm giving San Diego State credit, I don't think at all that the Razorbacks were fully engaged in this game for the longest part. I'm not saying they weren't playing hard. I just felt like there was something missing in terms of their mentality to match aggressiveness, to play to their strengths. And I'm not saying they fully backed down, but they weren't winning most of those blue collar battles. And so I will say it this another way. Um, whatever the challenge was that Musselman laid down, and then you put Kamani in, everybody kind of started to play off of his energy and what he was bringing. We've seen that in the past with Kamani. We saw it in Europe at times where he kind of got things settled down by just going in there and being a bull around the basket. And so I think it was contagious. I think other guys that helped bring people into better focus because he was showing them the blueprint of what it was going to take to win this game. I'm rambling a little bit because Kamani Johnson is a special commodity. He plays to his strengths. Musselman knows what he brings. But you don't just look at stats with him. You look at body language. You look at him being tougher than the guy he's matching up with. And now you want your teammates, for a veteran guy like that Arkansas senior forward, you want them to fall in line. And I think that's what it took. We could talk about a lot of plays in this game. I don't think that San Diego State made the wisest choices late. Like I said, fouling AB with 13 seconds left in a 2-possession game, it just extends the game. Arkansas will take it, though. Arkansas capitalized. They were still in advantage at that point, San Diego State was, but Arkansas made plays. And again, I was very critical in my thinking. I had some tweets I put out where I thought it was inexcusable that Arkansas seemed to be inept or not locked in, whatever it was. It's not that they weren't putting forth effort. It just seemed to me that they were not focused. And they know as well as anybody, this is a big-time game. You don't want to leave Maui not doing your best, not leaving it all on the court. You lose that way, fine. That's what happened against Creighton. And for a while, it just looked like they didn't show up all on that same wavelength. Musselman is on that wavelength. But how many times have we seen in the past, too? You go back 2 years ago when Arkansas turned its season around. It led the NCAA in comeback wins. Here's a nugget. When they trailed by double-digit deficits. They had like 10, 11, maybe 12 games where they came back from double-digit deficits and won. We saw Arkansas's team last year, not as many of those, but they turned around games that they trailed in. They figured it out. And this was one of those classic, let's just say vintage Eric Musselman teams where they just kept clawing and figuring it out. They would cut the lead down to 6, maybe to 5, and then there'd be a run. Didn't get back in transition. Stupid, just ridiculous turnovers. I use the word stupid, but I don't know how else to phrase it. Some of them were just senseless, self-inflicted wounds. And so then the lead would stretch back out, double digits or 9 points. And you're thinking, well, this might be one of those nights, but you never give up. Basketball's a funny sport too. There's always time on the clock. With 2 or 3 minutes left, you're down 4 or 6 points. You can flip that. And it was more about, to me, finally executing. I thought Arkansas needed to string together multiple possessions of execution, and then you couldn't just execute against this team. You had to be ready when the execution wasn't perfect to scrum, scrap, and battle for loose balls to prevent the other team from scoring. And what Arkansas did, I thought, was they turned that team into a one-player team offensively. I thought defensively Arkansas got better as the game went on, and the one guy kind of carried the other team, and that might have been enough. It was close to being just enough for San Diego State to hold on, but Arkansas was getting collective stuff. It was AB who was carrying the water first half. Now it's several guys, including AB late. And man, I'm going to say it again with Kamani Johnson. This guy's a hero. If you consider sports and one guy making a difference, coming off the bench, we hadn't seen him contribute really in Hawaii. He's a hero in this game, and a lot of guys stepped up, but he's a hero. And I think when I look at what Arkansas comes home to now, this is a much better way to celebrate Thanksgiving. It's a much better way to get into finish up November at home against Troy on Monday, and then you get into December. You may not get another quad one win opportunity till SEC play, until the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Those games later. We don't know if Oklahoma will be good enough by the time Arkansas plays them, or then good enough at the end of the year because you have to. It's all going to be settled. Quad one and all that's great now, but it's going to have to hold up later. by the end of the year. We don't know that OU is going to be that kind of team. So you wanted this win. This is a really good win for Arkansas. No, San Diego State's not a high major. They've been a really good basketball team in Division One. They've been good in NCAA tournament play. This is a really good win against a really good team. And San Diego State, you know how good this field is in Maui when they're going back 1-2. It could have been the opposite for both of these teams tonight. I know Eric Musselman's got to be proud. I haven't heard anything post-game. He's got to be proud that his team really dug in and gutted out a win when it didn't look like they were up for that challenge. It looked for so long like they weren't in for that challenge. And anybody that thought that is not crazy, but anybody that's going to stick to that line is crazy because they proved everybody wrong. Even if it took them a while to get there, they proved that no, we're not going to be the pushovers. We're going to be the nastier team when it comes down to just playing brutal blue-collar basketball. Arkansas won enough of those battles to get past that finish line first. All right, let's start reading some comments. By the way, it's Hogvillenet YouTube Live. I keep talking about the fact that we've got great content on the website, hogville.net. All of our content provided by our football writers, our baseball writers, basketball. We got a team group effort that everyone pitches in. Go check it out if you haven't. I hope you do. I've got a story up. It's just a shell of a story because there's so much detail. Similar to yesterday, I'm going to finish that up in the early hours of the morning, I guess, because I'm going to spend a lot of time on here. We're about 17 minutes in. I hope a bunch of you are as excited as I am because I love college basketball. I love basketball at all levels. Whether it's the Razorbacks, whoever it is, I want to see exciting games. And I thought Arkansas and San Diego State gave us that. And what a way to finish up Feast Week, or this part of Feast Week, going into the actual holiday. Because that game, to me, when I look at Arizona and Creighton earlier for the championship, this second game, even though it was much later at night and wasn't for a holiday tournament title, these are still big games that are great for all programs involved for the resume. This doesn't hurt San Diego State, this loss, and it certainly helps Arkansas. Suspend the coaches for San Diego State players for the next few games. Who started the scuffle? I just got chills to think. Yeah, let's see. The team has no quit. That's a good point. I keep saying that it looked like, I don't know what all the descriptors should be. Were they listless? Were they checked out? Were they not locked in? They seemed distracted, but it's not like they weren't giving effort. It's not like they weren't trying. It was more about there was just some obvious things. We've seen enough of this team to know when guys are just kind of maybe mentally checked out in stages of the game. There was enough of that with enough of the players early on where you felt like when Anthony Black went to the bench with those two fouls, they might be in trouble. And sure enough, they were. There was a 15-1 run there. And we had to come back in the game and help stem that. Arkansas really struggled. And even AB, wasn't playing as well as he did in the first two games. He was doing just enough. But to say there's no quit in the team is absolutely right, because the second half, other guys slowly but surely mounted, they mounted up what it took to get Arkansas back in this game and keep them in the game. Even if at times it looked like it might be slipping away again, then they pull, if it's a tug of war, they're pulling the rope back. What a move by us to put money in for Devo. Well, it's matchups. Devo didn't have his best game. In fact, I think, I would really question some of Devo's passing thoughts and some other things, very loose with the ball at times. And this is a game where you need to be a bit more sound and a bit more careful against a team that's going to take advantage of mistakes. And San Diego State did a great job of that for the longest period of time. Arkansas would make mistakes. Even when Arkansas would have runs, they were still having just goofy mistakes, that self-inflicted wounds. San Diego State goes to the other end and takes advantage of that. They were slow early. As the game wore on, they got their legs. I mean, in theory, there's a game where you might get tired, but I think with Arkansas, they're conditioned well enough. I just think, I'm not saying they were completely mentally checked out, but they weren't all locked in and focused. That seems obvious to me. And I think once they found that, and once they saw the tough guy come in, Kamani Johnson, They rallied around that. That was like wildfire. We talk about Devo. If you remember when Devo was a freshman, when I talked about all those games Arkansas fell behind by double digits, a lot of those games it was him coming off the bench and sparking the team, diving on the ball on the floor for loose balls, making a great defensive play at one end and sparking a transition. Arkansas would get things going. Kamani Johnson was that spark plug tonight. And, he's like a bowling ball in the paint with bodies, man. He's knocking guys around. Yeah, he drove a guy out of the paint and got an offensive foul. It was a turnover. But you'll take that because if he's playing like that, there's going to be a lot of positive that comes with that. You didn't want too many of those plays, but you got the good stuff. Imagine what the press will look like when Muss wants to turn it on later in the year. We are so long. They don't press a lot. They needed to. They had to. I guess you make a point, though, when you have length and size and athleticism, you can wreak havoc, especially if you get a guy trapped. Hopefully the offense doesn't it's not as stagnant times. Well, I lost that. I was fumbling around trying to read it. I didn't see it very well. Okay, so let's talk about Brazil. I think he was at 20-9. Let's see. See, the Hogs have multiple go-to players. That was the thing with Council. He was really he was just not good with the ball for so long in this game after showing us most of this early season that he was going to be reliable, but he turned it on once that light switch came on for him. He started to feel it. And that's what happens with go-to guys. They start feeling it. You wished he would have felt it earlier. Again, I think some of these guys, call it sleepwalking. I mean, it sounds like a discredit to him, but I don't know what phraseology to use because I don't think it was just bad luck. I don't think some of these guys were fully mentally locked into this game and focused. I felt like several of them, I'm not going to say they weren't giving effort again, but somewhere in between those descriptors, there was something not working and not clicking. And it wasn't all to do with San Diego State. I promise you that. I can tell. You can look at body language, and guys were just out of sync, and a lot of it had to do with it. Ricky was spraying the ball over the place. Devo was. You saw all kinds of stuff, and it was wild, disconnected, and they fixed it. And you're right. Go-to players, the second half was basically its own chapter, its own book about Arkansas having multiple go-to players. And it was good to see guys step up when AB was going through a stretch of not scoring because he's carried Arkansas for so many minutes in this event. And he's not going to be able to do that every single game consistently. And you wanted to make sure if you've got one guy that's not playing up to his best for a stretch, that you got two guys that are handling business. And in the first half, it was just AB, and then he went through a stretch, and other guys still hadn't quite yet stepped up. Ricky couldn't buy a basket in the first half, but it shows he found his offense. Trevon Brazile stepping out and knocking down threes. This is not a good three-point shooting team. Consistently, they struggled forever in this game, and he had a big second half knocking down threes, getting to the basket, making some free throws. I thought he was huge on the glass. That's something you have to do against a team like this. You got to have rebounders. Kamani Johnson came in and was physical. I thought Trevon Brazile also was physical on the glass at times, and I haven't always seen that from him. We've seen him have some big rebounding games, but this was a tough team. Wasn't as big and athletic as Arkansas in terms of size, of height, length, and you throw in all the other measurables. Some of their guys were, but they were grown men, seniors, 6-year seniors, juniors, filled out. These guys were filled out. They didn't have any rail thin guys on the other side, and they knew how to use their frames and bodies. You could tell they've been through a lot of wars together and how they dealt with Arkansas and some of Arkansas's advantages. Brazil and Council are walking highlight reels. They are. You saw one of the things I thought really helped Council was when he went coast to coast for that reverse dunk. He'd had some other plays in transition where he just couldn't keep the ball under control. I thought that helped him a little bit get his confidence going because he's such a talented player. You thought Arkansas might be done in when they got down I guess it was a possession where it was around 30 seconds. He went baseline. Really a bad angle shot. Wasn't the best decision. Ball goes out of bounds. Shot clock violation. About 30 seconds left. Arkansas's down 2. They put the press on. San Diego State beats it. They have to eventually foul. There's 17 seconds left. The guy steps up, 7 of 7 on the season, knocks down 2. Now he's 9 of 9. It's a 4-point lead, and I figured at that point this might be it. Again, I'm going to go back to that decision to foul Anthony Black, outside the 3-point line, basically not even facing the basket with 4 seconds later. I mean, I didn't understand that for the Aztecs, but I think it was great for Arkansas. Obviously, he makes them both. Arkansas gets to set up in its press and trap, and they didn't foul immediately, which was smart. That's why I think it was weird that San Diego State fouled with that much time, because you're giving Arkansas a chance to cut a 2-possession game down to 1 with still 13 seconds. So you're not forcing Arkansas to foul you immediately. It let Arkansas set up a trap. Trevon Brazile, what is he? Is he 6'10" with a 7'4" wingspan? That paid off. That was perfect. He falls on the ball, timeout, must go, draws up a play for AB. Him or Ricky, but I understand going to AB. And the reason I like that play, him getting downhill, he's the best passer out of this group. Okay. He's a guy that probably right now I might trust a little bit more at the free throw line. I think he's going to, and then as a passer, the defense can't clinch down on him or help on him, because they've got to stay with other guys and stay connected. And so I thought that was smart. And it's always smart to have Kamani in a game in a situation like that where you only need 2 points. You're driving into the basket, put it up there. Do your best to make a shot. And if you don't, you got a good chance Kamani's going to come down with it. I think it was great that Kamani not only came down with it, but he had presence of mind and enough, finishing skill in that situation to get that ball over the rim and in the basket to send it to overtime. And once that happened, I really felt like Arkansas was going to find a way to win the game. I really didn't feel like even after a couple of exchanges in that overtime, I think there was a 3-point shot by Trammell to give San Diego State a 1-point lead. Even when that happened, I thought Arkansas was going to win this game. Kamani helped make sure that happened. Ricky Council helped make sure that happened. Trevon Brazile helped make sure that happened. Guys like, to me, Jordan Walsh, we don't talk enough about Jordan. He made some big, tough plays himself in this game. He wanted that smoke. He wanted to get in the fight. And there were times when he did. He's still learning how to be smart in situations, but there's some smartness with toughness with him as well. So let's not discount that. Again, I say Barry Dunning gave Arkansas some good possessions because he was out there battling, and Arkansas wasn't battling enough at times. Just going down the lineup. I don't know that you can't, now that it's over with not only the top rotation guys, but now Kamani and Barry coming in. There was a splash of Kamani and Barry that felt like Europe. How long ago was that? It was August. So that's why opportunities and experiences like that help your team later on, is because even if guys aren't in the rotation, they've had opportunity somewhere so that they're not completely shocked to the system that you're putting them in the game. So even when you're running a tight rotation, there's other guys who are ready. Kamani's a veteran. He's, how long has he been around? He's a senior. You know what he's going to do. He's not backing down. But I love to see Barry as a freshman. We don't know what we're going to get all the time with a freshman, but we saw him not make mistakes when Arkansas was in Europe. He limited mistakes. He had production. And I thought when he came in, even though you're not going to look at a box score and see a lot of production, you're going to see what I saw in the time he was in was someone who was ready for those battles. And I don't think enough Razorbacks were for the longest time. So you like to see it. Excuses. Creighton fans who decided missing a top 3 player was an excuse rather than the reason. Arkansas's missing an all-star right now. I don't think for much longer. But, you go to Maui against that schedule and you go 2-1 without Nick Smith Jr. Arkansas recruited well in the offseason. We know there's really good players. I think it's maybe the most exciting lineup that I've been around as covering it in media in a lifetime of growing up as a fan in the state, being around the Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson years. I don't know that there's a more talented group of players that Arkansas's had. That's always debatable. I can probably peel back some of those teams and tell you why some of the other ones might be. But if it's that close and it's razor thin that it is, I think that tells you how much talent's here. So even with Nick Smith Jr. out, talent's one thing. You've got to learn trial by fire. And Arkansas put all of it together No, they didn't go undefeated, obviously. But you come out of this with a 3-point loss in one of the best games of the year in college basketball so far against Creighton. That might hold up as one of the games people still talk about later. And then you find a way to come back in this game and win it against a team that helped you get better too. You didn't just win a game, you got better, you learned more about yourself. Guys like Trevon Brazile and Ricky Council are gonna be better for this. I think Anthony Black's going to be better not only for this game, but what he was able to do throughout this event because he was the one guy when we came out of the first 3 games. If you looked at Brazil averaging a double double, you look at Ricky Council leading the team in scoring in every game, right at 19 points a game. Some of this production you expected from them. We didn't expect Anthony Black to be as good offensively as he was in this event. And so he proved some stuff to himself and to the rest of us. I really can't wait for him to come back. Winning 2-1 without him is crazy. So we're going to be insane when he comes back. That's probably true at some point. Advantage Arkansas. And if he comes back soon with some of the schedule, they're going to have a lot of home games, some mid-major teams. You're going to have some adjustments. Guys are going to have to adjust a little bit to different roles. I think we're going to see Devo probably play off the bench. We're going to see some guys' minutes come down. I think he's one of them, not as a punishment, but because your rotation now – there's no planet, there's no parallel universe where Nick Smith Jr. is not your number 1 or number 2 in your rotation. Okay, so that's going to affect. There's a little bit of a domino effect for everybody, so it's going to affect some guys. But I think Devo is going to pitch in and do what's needed to make this the best team it can be. He transitioned last year and it helped Arkansas from a starter to a 6-man. And I think we'll see a similar role. He's still going to have starter value. Trevon Brazile has been playing off the bench. He's a starter. I said it last night or earlier today, I don't remember, but that's a lie. He's not really a 6-man. He's a starter. He's just not beginning the game on the floor when it tips, but he came in really quick tonight. I think fans probably noticed that he got in early, and then he's finishing games. So, yeah, when Nick Smith Jr. gets back, I think Arkansas's got a chance to take steps to be on another level. And we haven't seen enough. As good as Arkansas looked at times in this event, it also looked bad at times. We know that it had trouble defending Creighton, shot lights out. Arkansas got better in that game, but it wasn't enough to win. We've seen Arkansas struggle at times with turnovers of the self-inflicted kind. The reason why that's important is because you're making it easier for the other team when you're not getting shots on goal, and it's not of their doing, it's of your own doing. You can only blame yourself, so you only credit the other team so much. When they earn it, credit them. If they don't, then you're looking at yourself going, man, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot. And I also think we talked about turnovers. I still think free throws are a mystery with this team. They got a much better job getting to the line. There were times where I felt like, oh, these misses, man, they're going to leave it. They might leave things just short, but they made just enough when they needed to. And to me, it ended up being a successful night at the free throw line. When I look back at the full arc of it, to me, the free throw line was a win. You got there a lot, and you shot well enough, and when it mattered, that you had to have them. I mean, AB hitting those last 2 free throws in regulation, Arkansas had to get that down. They had to cut that lead in half, and they did. There were other times, overtime, other parts of the game where I felt like Arkansas did just enough to give themselves a chance, and a lot of that was at the free throw line. Getting tougher in the paint wasn't just about the rebounds. It was about the points. And, we start seeing guys like Ricky Council and Kamani making a real difference around the basket. In Brazil at times, we knew AB was rolling and looking to get his at times, but those guys stepped up too. And so when you're down 16 points in the paint for the majority of the game, yet you finish a -2, that means you flip the script in a big way. And you wonder, you start to think to yourself, well, what made the difference? Why did it take so long? And again, Kamani Johnson's a simple answer. It's not just his production, numbers by numbers. 7 points doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot in a close game, and you weren't going to get close unless he came in and started showing the way for other guys to step up. And so it was collective, but it was kind of that one guy was the catalyst. And so you give everybody credit. You give everybody that was on that floor credit, but you can look at one guy and say that he was the hero in this. And I'm going to say that with Kamani Johnson, and other guys too, but really he was the one. I think if he doesn't play, Arkansas loses this game by 10 or 12 points. no matter what other guys did to maybe get better late. I think Arkansas goes down and goes in flames to finish out Maui if there's no Kamani Johnson. That's my take. All right, so we're 35 minutes in. Hogvillenet YouTube Live. Go to hogville.net for all the content. You love football, you love baseball, you love basketball, you love the other sports, and I know you love the Razorbacks. So you put all that together. Hogville.net's got you covered. The YouTube Lives are a great chance for us to be interactive. You can see our faces, hear our voices, hear me drag on and on about the same stuff. But I love basketball and I want to talk about it. Big fan of exciting games, no matter what time of year they are. You want to be courtside. You want to have an armchair quarterback. You want to be there for these kind of games. You want to win them, but blowouts are great too if you win them. There's a place for that. But you come into Maui, and you knew you were going to, if you got to play two ranked teams, that those should not, you're probably not going to win, easily. Arkansas took care of business against Louisville, brand name, but not a good team. Did what it was supposed to do. Creighton was, that's going to be one. I know this coaching staff. I'm going to tell you right now, I know this coaching staff. I know they are beyond livid about the officiating in that game. There's no doubt about it. You can already tell that by some of the stuff that Muss has put out there publicly without getting himself in trouble. So that's kind of already obvious. But I can tell you that it probably goes beyond what you think. But look, you can let that drag you down, and you can let that be a distraction. And I think Musselman does a great job of compartmentalizing things. He probably let that be a distraction until the minute he couldn't keep his eyes open anymore the night after that game. But he had to get his team right. And even though I thought Arkansas was distracted, maybe there was a bit of a hangover, I don't lay that at the feet of the coaching staff because I know they know Musselman's been in too many wars at too many levels of basketball. They know how to get a team ready. So whatever the reasons were, thank goodness Arkansas woke up. We can say it that way. They woke up and went to work. Whatever buttons were pushed there, Musselman was doing everything he could and certainly doing it with personnel. We saw that. But I think, again, Arkansas is going to look back at this experience. How many times now? This is 7 games outside the continental USA, and we're still in November, going all the way back to August. 11 newcomers out of 13 on scholarship. Yeah, a lot of talent. Yeah, a lot of intangibles, a lot of tangibles with all that length and athleticism. We say it over and over ad nauseum. But you've had all these experiences to get away from home, put yourself in some adverse situations, even if you've got the better players. And Arkansas now has seen a lot. Even that Texas game in Austin, it didn't count, but who does that? Who goes on the road and plays that kind of a game? A lot of teams have secret scrimmages in some games. There are teams that do it. But with what Musselman had, it would have been easier for him to play another D2 and go the confidence route. And I think that's a paper tiger. I think it was better to put that adversity in front of this team before it ever counted and let them see what it really takes to play at a high level against a veteran, talented team in its own right. And they took Arkansas behind the woodshed in the second half. So I look at all these experiences playing overseas, outside the continental United States, going up against Texas. I look at all of that as huge positives before you ever step foot out in November. The MO for this staff and this program has been to lead up to tough competition, typically when you get closer to conference play. This is a much different playbook, but for the first time ever, Musselman replaced almost an entire roster and a lot of youth and experience in there. And so I like this. You bring in talent, go play good teams. You bring in talent, test that talent. You bring in youth and all that. Don't bide your time and then let them take a bunch of heavy shots going into SEC play. We saw that 2 years ago. I like that Musselman figures out to move the pieces around the board. He's not always going to be a one-trick pony or be someone that's in a certain lane on everything that's predictable. And I really like that. I admire that. Pre-game planning, in-game adjustments, understanding his personnel and roster so that, the in-game adjustments are one thing, but you don't know until you see it what guys are going to do. And with Kamani, he's kind of the one guy where you're like, yeah, I know what he's going to bring. I know he's going to bring what he brought. Is it going to translate to production? Is it going to flip the game and get everybody else on board? That's what you don't know, but it's your best shot, and it ended up working out. But I think all those experiences, I just went through all the stuff Arkansas has already been through, and it's still November. I think it helps you understand when and how and why you need these things this early, and it's only going to make this team better going forward. It sounds like I'm just, a complete and total homer, but guess what? Arkansas is a top 10 ranked team. They're going to probably maintain that, and we haven't seen Nick Smith Jr. yet. All right. So I'm not just a homer. The national guys think a lot of Arkansas. It was funny because during the Arizona Creighton game today, after that was over, the talking heads for ESPN were talking about those two teams. And Jay Billis says, and I want to put Arkansas in here. Arkansas was good enough to win this. That's a championship kind of team. And I thought that was a correct salute to make. Then when I saw Arkansas play for much of this game, I started to question that. And I thought, well, Billis might be second guessing his own sentiment. But I think now Arkansas showed that it is worthy of being viewed that way, at least right now. A lot of season left. I think it's only up for Arkansas. They're not going to win every game here on out, but I think they're going to get better, and I think we're going to see them do better. And I think that we see Musselman has options if certain guys don't get better and have backslads. And so that's another thing to look at when you're talking about growth on a team, because we know he's not afraid to tweak the lineup and rotation. He's done it 2 years in a row, and he's done it with almost a magic touch. And so you expect that out of him. He's the constant, the one thing that Arkansas has had in place this entire time as the roster turns over and over and over. All right, I don't have to worry about Kamani's disappearance anymore. I mean, there may be stretches of games where we don't see a lot of him. It just depends on matchups, what Musselman thinks other guys are doing. He obviously he saved the game tonight. There's no doubt about it. It wasn't a one-man thing, but it was one man who I thought turned the tide. Who else could you think of, and after you watch this game playing out the way it was, who else could you think of on that bench that's not in the rotation that you'd want to insert in there? He tried to bring Jalen Graham in for a little bit. He came back out. The Mitchell twins, there were some spots there, but I felt like they were exposed a little bit just by the savvy nature of these older players for San Diego State. The Mitchell twins are older too. I'm not saying that it's their fault. I'm just saying sometimes matchups, it just works that way. It's just how it is. It's not that those guys weren't worthy. It's just that maybe somebody else can come in and match up a little better. And I think Merrick Musselman got sick of watching Arkansas taking the heavy blows in this game and not delivering as many. You can't throw a few jabs when you're getting hit upside the head and in the gut. And sometimes you need a guy that's going to go in there and brawl and mix it up and show everybody else how to do that. And that was Kamani Johnson, was it not? So that's how I see it. Hopefully Arkansas fans, if we had a starting lineup of Nick, Council, A.B., Walsh, and Brazile/Mitchell, we'd be one scary team. Well, again, I mean, you look at, Brazil's been playing off the bench. He's a starter, though. I mean, look at the minutes he's playing. I don't know who starts. He checked in really early in this game as well. The whole lineup is oversized. They're big. They're supersized, that's for sure. I don't know about oversized. I think they have the flexibility to play different ways, but they are very big positionally. Let's see. Trying to read some of this. I'm sorry, my eyes are failing me a little bit. It's a little blurry, but it's an oversized lineup positionally compared to most teams. But it's, if you look at Arkansas where it struggled last year, they didn't have enough size outside of Jalen Williams. And we saw Duke take advantage of that. I think Musselman he's not one of those that's not afraid to get out of his own box and do something a little differently. And what did he do? As soon as the season ended last year and that loss to Duke, I mean, the transfer portal, we're talking about effectively getting 4 guys, all 6'9" or taller, athletic, long, out of the portal within about a span of a week. That's how that played out. So he knew precisely what he wanted to do. I believe Mitchell starts. Yeah, I mean, Makai's been in the starting lineup. Do you think Kalel Ware was a big loss? He's a 5-star. He's a 7-footer, and I've covered him for years. I think he's a hell of a player and a future NBA player. I think Musselman did a really good job in the portal. I don't know how big of a loss it is when I look at a guy like Trevon Brazile, who's doing some of the things he's doing. There are some similar qualities there. You got the Mitchell twins. I don't know what Arkansas gets out of the portal if they've got Khalil Ware. I think he'd be a fine college player as a freshman at Arkansas, but I don't know that Arkansas would have as much as it got either. So those are kind of hard. You got to rewind all that, and we don't know how that would have played out getting other guys. But I like what they've got in Brazil. We just need to see Javon Brazil consistently putting two halves together. He's not going to be lights out every game in both halves, but we're seeing a lot of, feast or famine. And at some point, I think he's going to improve on that. I really don't doubt that. It's so early in the season. He's been really good for the most part. He turned it on in the second half against Creighton. He turned it on again in the second half. One game, Arkansas almost won. One game, they almost lost and found a way to win, but he was a big part of the success and has been so far. And when a guy like Nick Smith Jr. is out, and you're thinking that's going to be your heaviest producer, there are questions, and these guys are stepping up and answering those questions. Brazil's a part of that. I like his ceiling, man. I think he's a future NBA player. I think Ricky Council is. I think Jordan Walsh is. I think Anthony Black is. I think Nick Smith Jr. obviously is. Wherever Razorback fans are ready to see him on the court. Yeah, we're getting close. We're 45 minutes in. I want to go a full hour here just because I'm still excited. It's almost 12:40 a.m. Central Time. Ricky Council emerging as a leader. Okay, you saw him in the huddle tonight hyping the team up. You know what? I think he is. I think AB is a leader. I think those two guys have leadership qualities. I think Devo and Kamani can. I think Devo is also that's probably not seen as much, but he's also a leader. He's very vocal. Sometimes his decision making leaves some. You're thinking that's kind of a freshman move, but he's really. I mean, Arkansas is not where it's done. It does not accomplish what it has done the last 2 years without him. This team is only going to go as far as he can help them. He's a big part of this as a leader. And so it's not just on court. I think he's a leader. But Ricky Council, that was the point you were making. I would agree with that. I would agree that AB is. I would agree that Devo is. And you're going to find out that Nick Smith Jr. is. He's an alpha, but he's not a selfish alpha. He wants to win. He wants others involved. He's going to he's just going to add to what we're starting to see. And again, Arkansas is going to have some growing pains when he gets back. There's going to be adjustments. And no matter how good your team is, when you're as young and still any experience playing together, there's going to be some growing pains. Arkansas is not going to go undefeated with Nick Smith Jr. in the lineup or without him. Devo is a flashy player, and we're going to love it and hate it sometimes. Yeah, sometimes you're scratching your head, and other times he's making some big plays. I've seen both this year. That's true. I think with Devo, he really embraced his off the ball role as a freshman. There's more to his game than just that, and he's playing more on the ball. But I don't feel like he's figured out all the quite yet. To be consistent with some of the nuance and some of the things you need to be able to do as a primary handler at times. Sometimes he's loose with it. Sometimes he's putting steam on a pass when a guy's 5 feet away from him, or making kind of a home run play where it's just not there. But he's so exciting in the open court at times. He's got great court awareness and vision. It's just, when to pull that chain and when to just make the simpler play. I think sometimes Devo still wrestles with that. I'm being, so I don't want to get on this tangent where I'm being overly critical because I think he's a fine player. I really do. There was a reason he was second team preseason All SEC last year coming into his sophomore season. There's a reason why he's hit a game winner to put Arkansas in the Elite Eight. There's a reason why Arkansas came back from so many double-digit deficits 2 years ago. He was a big part of that, similar to how Kamani helped turn things around tonight. There's a reason why Arkansas is 5-1 right now, and a big part of that's Devo Davis. He came into this game right at 10 points a game and doing other things, and so that are positive. So the Arkansas needs Devo Davis, but I think he's one of the leaders. And this team may end up with, because there's so many newcomers, more than your two veteran guys in some ways have got to be leaders. I thought Kamani was tonight. I just said Devo has been. I think you're right about Ricky. I think Nick Smith and AB as freshmen in the backcourt. So I think you've got 5 guys. sometimes you think, well, you only need one leader. I don't think that's true in sports. I think you need multiple, and I think it depends on the makeup of your team, the chemistry, and sometimes I think you've got to have different things from different guys and lead in different ways. Sometimes it's vocal, sometimes it's by example, sometimes your go-to guys. You need more than one. Sometimes last year, we talked all the time about it being JD Notae living and dying by his decision making, but truthfully, Jalen Williams was a leader and a go-to guy. He was vocal. He made big plays at both ends late in games. Sometimes it wasn't with the ball in his hand. Sometimes it was taking a charge or getting a deflection or 50-50 ball himself. Big J Will would go to the floor with that 6'10" frame and fight for a loose ball. He was a leader. This team's going to identify its leaders as we go, and we've talked about some of those. I think there could be as many as a handful at different times and in different ways, and so I think that's huge because some of those are freshmen. And some of them are, and they're all new together, really, other than Devo and Kamani. So a lot of growing pains still to go. But if you're winning games while you're having some pains, that's better than losing them. And Arkansas found that out tonight. Let's see. Anybody else? I'm getting close. We're over 50 minutes now. I'm going to push it to 60. I've got about 9 minutes left. I can ramble for 9 more minutes. Hogvillenet YouTube. Devo's defense is great, but he makes very dumb decisions at critical times. Sometimes he makes really big plays at critical times. Last night, Devo stepped to the free throw line and hit 2 big free throws with 18 seconds left that got Arkansas back to a one-possession a 1-point deficit. He gave Arkansas a chance in that game. You're talking about a team that hasn't been great at the free throw line. Devo hasn't always been great at the free throw line, but he was clutch in that situation. There have been other things he's done that we just sometimes overlook. I thought he did a good job at times on Trammell. Trammell didn't have just a blow up night all the time, and I thought he did some things late, but I thought Devo did some respectable work defensively on him. Again, there are mistakes that Devo makes that make you feel like these are kind of freshman mistakes, but no player's perfect, and you take good with bad. And I think he's one of those guys that in the long run, and we've seen it already, so it's not like I'm speculating. He's proven it. In the long run, over the haul, you're better without him. There's no doubt about that. Do you think Brazil would be good at the 5 when Nick comes back? So, not in all matchups, and he's got to be more consistent. He's not necessarily a physical guy. He's super athletic. He can use his length to make plays out of his area. He can be a very productive rebounder. I thought he did a good job in the second half there. And you can go small ball lineups. You can have guys like Jordan Walsh, playing a small ball 3-4. He's a 3-4 combo. So it depends on what the other team's got on the floor, how Mussman wants to match up. So yes, there's potential for some of that. And when Nick comes back, we might see some of that. But I think also Arkansas's got some real value beyond a Kamani Johnson, who we saw that tonight with the Mitchell twins, and maybe somewhere Jalen Graham. Don't count him out. Trey Wade was the guy that wasn't factoring into anything, and he ends up going in the starting lineup. He wasn't a heavy minutes guy every night, but he helped Arkansas. There were games he was really productive. Other games, maybe not as productive, but he sets a tone. Being in that starting lineup, he set a physical tone. He set a less is more in terms of making mistakes. He wasn't a big mistake guy. So he got Arkansas off on the right foot in games. So I think there are guys on the front line that can help Arkansas. So I'm not ready to say if Nick Smith comes back, Arkansas is now going to shift to Ron Brazil at the 5 and mostly small ball lineups. However, that will be something that we will see at times. Again, it'll be matchups. There may be other guys that are not performing, and that's what Musselman decides to do. But he's got so many options. Again, I think this is the most collective talent. I go back all these years. I've seen a lot of Razorback teams and some great ones. And this one's right up there when I look from 1 through 13, especially in the top 10, but even 1 through 13, this is a lot of really good basketball players and a lot of options. And that's why you don't want to get confused when you say he plays 6 or 7 guys. Against Creighton, the second half, it was 5 guys. He drilled it down tonight. 5 guys again, really down the stretch. But within those rotations, he can pluck and pull and change them out. And he's got quality to bring in. So he can keep the rotation down, but now he's got maybe a few different pieces in there. And that's a luxury. That's a luxury. It's a luxury he didn't have his first season. And he's gotten better and better with what he's brought in because it takes time to recruit. And we've seen the results on the court. I mean, they back up the fact that he knows what he's doing. I really think the biggest question mark with Musselman was in his second season with those freshmen. A lot of NBA coaches don't like playing rookies. Eric Musselman's a young coach in terms of the college game at that point, still is, relative to some of his contemporaries. But I thought it took him a little longer to put guys like Devo and Jalen Williams on the court and trust them. And some of the guys he brought in from the portal who weren't near the players they were, and who you can make the argument, well, maybe they weren't ready. Well, the guys that were veterans he was playing weren't ready either. And Arkansas was going the wrong way. So I think if there's any one knock I would ever have against on Eric Musselman was just kind of figuring out on the college level, sometimes those young guys, you better get them out there. And he didn't hesitate with Moses Moody. That's one thing I'll give him credit for. He was a day one starter. But I think with this group of 3 5-stars and even bringing in a Barry Dunning tonight, bringing in Joseph Pinion potentially for a 3-point shot last night, even though he didn't factor into the real rotation. I think now Musselman, he understands probably better than anybody now, not only what he has, but that he's going to use anybody and everybody at any time. And he's not going to hold it against you for being a rookie. I do think in that second year when he had all 4 of those freshmen, that was a lot for him to count on most of those guys early on. But I think he figured out later on that was his best decision. But again, I'm not going to second guess Eric Musselman. I think tonight he pushed all the right buttons. We've seen him do it a million times. That's an exaggeration. They haven't played that many games, but he's been great. All right, so let's see. The mark of a good team is winning when you're not playing your best game. These guys showed, yeah, no doubt. Sometimes you've got to find a way to pick yourself up off the mat. You look at shooting numbers. Arkansas hasn't been a good 3-point shooting team. There's been a couple of games here in Maui where they showed some promise, some potential. There are so many ways in games. They were minus 16 in the points in the paint when usually they're blowing teams out there. So, it's maybe easy for a team to just kind of, go through the motions and finish out the game. Eric Musselman teams don't do that. They play with energy, effort, they fight. And a sign of a good team is figuring out a way to win when you're not having your best night. There's no doubt about that. And we've seen that really be kind of part of what his program is. How many games go down to the wire and Arkansas just out executes, out toughs, and figures it out? That's the common denominator, and that goes back to Musselman, because we know there's just different personnel every year. You could look at back-to-back Elite Eights and this team. In the old days, you might see the same players that are still in the program, and you go, well, this is just a great group, and they figure out ways how to win. No, these rosters turn over. Arkansas finds ways to win these games, but it's different players, different seasons, and it's a whole new ball of wax. And so who's the common denominator? Eric Musselman. He conveys to his teams to hang in there, figure it out. He's going to help them. He's going to make sure that they respond at some point. Again, it wasn't lack of effort tonight. I thought it was just guys were a bit checked out. Not intentionally, they just weren't locked in for whatever reason. And Kamani Johnson said, "I'm locking you all in. We're going to go into the paint, and we're going to have ourselves a little battle in here, and we're going to come out on top." And guys fell in line. And I thought Ricky Council, Trevon Brazile, Anthony Black, these are guys that have been consistently productive for Arkansas. To have a guy like Kamani Johnson come in and be a leader in that way, there was no selfishness. Guys just fell into place. They followed the leader. They followed the veteran. That's what I saw. And that tells me that there's already some good chemistry going here, because, again, it'd be easy to point and say, well, we don't have Nick Smith Jr. We're still figuring out. We're a young team. That team had 7 seniors and a couple of juniors. Do the math. That's why we lost. That wasn't going to be the answer tonight. And come on, I go back to the old man, Kamani Johnson, saying, come on, guys, I'll show you how to do this. And they did it. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in. I'm long-winded sometimes. I repeat myself. I'm thinking out loud